This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversations with musicians and music industry professionals, all intended to help musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Hey, it's your host, Rabanzo. Welcome to another episode. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I'm a longtime gigging musician, and you also know that I love sharing my personal experience and the things I'm learning from other musicians. You can be privy to those learnings by joining the Unstarving Musician community. In the process, you'll be supporting this podcast. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com to join. You'll get an email from me about every 7 to 10 days with insights you can use, all intended to make your music journey a little better and brighter. And you'll also get a free gift from me, a token of my appreciation for being part of the Rabanzo Nation. My guest for this episode, Lance Harvill, came on my radar by way of his work with my high school classmate and teenage bandmate Rex Brown. Some of you will know Rex as a founding member of Pantera. In 2017, Lance's work was featured on Brown's solo album, Smoke on This, and he was part of the ensuing tour. He's another guy who grew up near me in DFW, but a guy I did not really get to know until very recently. I went into our conversation interested in learning more about Lance's career, but what we started with was how he met Pantera, and he talked at length about Pantera guitarist Dime and what a great friend he was. The story covers Lance's earliest gigs that included opening for Pantera back when they were just playing clubs in Fort Worth, Texas. Fast forward several years, and he would connect with Rex Brown on a project called Arms of the Sun, which you will not find in iTunes or Spotify. Except for being featured on albums like Rex's Smoke on This, most of Lance's work resides in catalogues intended for use in film and TV. You can hear some of that work by checking out links in the show notes for this episode, but you can't buy that either because it's for use with film and TV. As Lance puts it, most of his work and his career happens in his home studio. He's content working from home, but he's likely going to release something new under the Arms of the Sun name in 2019. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I hope we'll be able to buy some of that stuff. Lance says he has no plans to tour or play gigs, and hopefully we will see him on the road again with the Rex Brown Band, or perhaps with whatever in 2019 he does as Arms of the Sun. In addition to saying a great deal about Pantera guitarist Dime and his friendship with Rex, Lance also talks about, or he says a few words rather, about writing music for film and TV, about Nashville, country music, Dallas, Texas, and more. At the end of our conversation, you're going to hear Lance's guitar and vocal work on a track called Wasted Me, which was featured in the aforementioned Arms of the Sun project. When he sent me the track, I wasn't sure if it was new or from the original project, so I asked him the story, what the story behind that track was. I'd like to read what he said in response and preface it by saying Lance's kind words about our conversation, which I won't bore you with, reminded me of how fracking lucky I am to speak with people like him and all the other great guests I've had on the podcast. So thank you, all of you. Here's what Lance said about the track Wasted Me. It was on the Arms of the Sun record. Rex on bass, John Luke Herbert of King Diamond and Chastain on drums. This is one I had the music to, but no lyrics or melody yet. Rex heard the instrumental and loved it, and we needed one more for the album. I went and wrote lyrics and melody in a pinch, and this is what came out. It's about personal suffering brought on by oneself. Story of my life, he says. And now, here is my conversation with multi-instrumentalist, singer-songwriter Lance Harvill. Lance, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It is going pretty darn good. As we were just chatting about before pressing record, I'm in Panama, and it's rainy season. It's been rainy season, but we haven't had tons of rain or cloudy days, but the past couple we have, and I've had some windy rain, but it's nice. I can't complain. I'm in shorts, and I understand it's getting chilly where you are.
Oh, yeah. Starting to cool down a little bit. Finally, though. My air conditioning broke down here in the basement, so that's where the studio is. So I've had to come up with some miracles trying to keep the weather down here good for the gear, you know.
Yeah,
but I got one of those little fancy little stick in the window jobs, so we're good.
What did the temperatures get up to there?
Oh, they're not bad, dude. Like what you and I experienced in Texas is way hotter, but it gets a little hot here. It's more humid in Texas, but it just gets funky here, dude, with bugs and you're in the trees here in Nashville. So you get a lot of little weird, creepy crawlies and creatures and stuff like that down here in the basement.
Oh, I know all about the bugs. I always tell people I'm in the jungle. We moved in February to a beach condo, so we're a little less in a drier area. I mean, it's a wet country, but it's in a dry zone, I guess. And but yeah, I've seen a lot of bugs since we've been here, so I feel for you. I know that.
We're trying to figure out where to go next. My wife, who I met. Actually, I lived in Nashville when I was a kid with my parents. That's kind of how I was familiar with the area, and moved back here. But my wife, I met her at the skating rink here in 1983.
Oh, that's great.
And then I moved to Texas with my family and lived there off and on 30 years. Then I moved back here in 2013, and I looked her up, and she wasn't married, and I wasn't married. So ended up marrying my high school sweetheart from the skating rink.
That is amazing.
And she's been here. Yeah, it is, man. She's been here her whole life, so she's like ready to get out and have an adventure. So, yeah, and I'm kind of realizing after a few years, Nashville's a nice place and everything, but I'm just so used to Dallas-Fort Worth area being so massive and so much to do and so many places to go and activities and stuff. And Nashville's just a little bit on the slow side. There's not a lot happening. And if it is, it's country music. And I'm not a real big fan of country music, man, personally.
I love it. I've had some country artists here on the podcast, and it's cool to hear about their journeys, and I certainly appreciate what they're doing, and I've come around to some country music for sure. But yeah, it took me a while. Where in the Dallas?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of respect for older country, because those guys didn't even call it country. It's what the media called it. So these guys were natural. They really were from farms and from tough times, and they really sang about real stuff. But I think country these days has become manufactured, and it's almost a comedy routine. It's just, country used to mean something. It used to be something cool, man. Just what it's turned into is just a funky little town here with them borrowing from every other genre. I don't mean to be negative about country. It has its place. It's just it just isn't what it used to be, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. And too late. No, no. I get it. It also took me a long time to come around to appreciating the older stuff, but I hear you. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Nashville? Since 2013, you said?
Yeah, September 2013. I moved the kids. I had custody over my kids since 2009. I raised them alone. And so I packed them up, brought them to Nashville, and we found us a little place out here in Hendersonville, a house with my wife. And it all happened really quickly, actually. I had nothing going on in Dallas, and all of a sudden I moved to Nashville, and everything I intended on happening didn't happen. And a bunch of other crazy stuff came about afterwards. So it worked out really well.
Well, that's good.
Coming here.
So I was listening to a video podcast, a Q&A thing about Arms of the Sun, which was really great, by the way. And you mentioned, cool. I think, that you have a 17-year-old. Is he your oldest?
No, my daughter just turned 20. She's the captain of the ship over here. She's Madison. She's in her second year of college. And then I have a son, Ethan. He's in his junior year of high school. And then my other son, River, he's in his sophomore year. So, yeah, man, they're getting older. Kids grow so fast. It's unbelievable.
Oh, I'm sure. And I don't have any. I know Rex, our mutual friend Rex, has kids as well. And I haven't seen them in forever. I'll be probably just shocked if I do get to see them again.
I haven't seen them in a few years, and I'm blown away by the pictures. I saw them before I moved, and when Rex and I were doing our other project back in, I think, 2009 and 10, and boy, they have just shot up. They were little kids the last time I saw them, and now they're like towering over me and Rex. Our boys are like, they just shot up like 6 feet tall. Like, hey, Dad. Like, yeah, go ahead, son. Have whatever you want, man.
And for those of you who are listening, if you're hearing this for the first time, we're talking about a mutual friend, Rex Brown, who a lot of people know from Pantera, and he's got his own thing now, the Rex Brown Band, and an album that you did with him in 2017. So there's a related episode to that you can search for, and you can probably find all kinds of things Rex Brown just by doing a search on him. I want to talk, and also I'm going to put in the show notes the video podcast you did for Arms of the Sun, which again was really great. And it gives a great history of what was going on there, how you became entwined in the lives of Rex and his bandmates way back when, which was funny to me. And I've said this before on the podcast because I'm meeting people lately. In fact, my guest from last week, John Christopher Davis, the same with you. I think, I was growing up in the area while you were playing and meeting those guys at the same time, and maybe stood in the same club with you somewhere. I don't know, but
sure we did. Yeah,
I wanted to ask you first.
Dude, I was how old are you? Are you Rex's age?
Yes, I'm an old dude.
I was about 4 years younger than you guys. So Dime was like 21. I was 17. So when you guys were all out in the clubs, I was at Savvy's standing behind that cage. You remember that cage at Savvy's for the minors?
I don't. I probably...
That little club in Savvy's that they kind of honed their chops in on, over there, that club they played. That was I went there to see him. I was just a kid. We went with my buddy's friend, uncle, to get us in, and we had to stand behind the damn... there was a cage. They had a fence in the club that divided it. And basically the minors could get in, but they had to stay behind that cage and drink water and lemonade and shit, stuff. And then the rest of the club. So you just kind of had to watch the action from the fence, but it was amazing, man. That's where I saw Pantera auditioning singers. That's when before they got Phil, they had Donnie Hart. Yep. And a couple other guys they were auditioning before they got Phil. And by the time they got Phil, I was in this band, and the singer, he was a real go-getter, man. He was a truck driver. He just knew how to make phone calls. He was a good singer and everything, but that really wasn't, he was good, but we were just a local band, and he just made the right phone calls and got us a gig opening for them. And and that's where I met Dime. I don't know if you remember this. For a little while, there was a club out in Dallas near the basement, and I can't remember if it was called it was right next to that La Bear, that guys dancing club. Yeah. And they usually didn't venture out to Dallas for gigs. They usually stayed in the Fort Worth area. So, they went everywhere else, Oklahoma and all that, but usually Dallas gigs, you didn't see them out there too much. And so they played one night out there, and I opened for them, and that's when I met Dime. I offered him I figured he'd talk to me if I had a joint or something. So I rolled this joint of this crappy weed because I was just a kid. And I went into the after our gig, after they played, and I offered him. He kind of like, yeah, that's cute, kid. But actually, I'll tell you what he did. He took me on stage, and he took me to the side, and he opened up this little thing. And that was the first time I'd ever seen hydroponic weed. Dime was the first person I ever got, like, really good high quality. Am I allowed to talk about this in this podcast?
You can.
All right. Anyway, so I had this little teenager high school stuff, this little brown stuff, and I offered it to him. He sucked through it. You kind of see the flavor of the stuff you're going to smoke by just sucking through the joint before you light it. And he was like, dude, check this out, man. So he gave me a little nug of some of the best stuff, man. So he was obviously smoking the good stuff. But, yeah, he gave me a little chunk of that. So that was my meeting Dime, is me showing him crappy weed. He showed me the good stuff, and then he gave me his phone number, and he was living with his mom at the time. I was living with my mom, so we would trade phone calls, and I got to sit and basically get guitar lessons from Dime over the phone and just swap licks and stuff. It was an incredible time, man. So I really grew up knowing Dime, and because of that, I ended up meeting Rex through a mutual friend a lot later. But the Pantera guys have been rooted, and you know what? I'm not even really a heavy metal. I love heavy metal, but the more I developed guitar and singing, I wasn't capable of the high screams and all that stuff. So I kind of went the Alice in Chains direction when that came out in like 90 and 91, and Pantera was blowing up, and also alongside of it, Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. So it's funny because all the people in my life that helped me, I work with, are extreme heavy metal, and I'm like air supply compared to them. But for some reason, they let me in their group, so they're clique. So it's cool, man.
Yeah, that's funny. Do you think if you would have had the vocal range or the scream capacity that you would have pursued heavier music, or do you think you still would have gravitated toward what you ended up doing?
Well, the thing is, dude, is when I was younger and what I really liked about music was melody.
Mm-hmm.
I was a goofy kid, dude. I liked Olivia Newton-John and Xanadu, and because they had ELO's music in it. So I liked really melodic Elton John, Philadelphia Freedom, of course the Beatles, anything by the Beatles. So I was strongly affected by melody and mood. So as long as in heavy metal I could have incorporated some of that melody, but once I heard Phil Anselmo start singing like that, man, there was just no way. There was just no way. I mean, once you hear that type of delivery, and that type of attitude, I just knew I would never match that. There was no way. So I didn't even attempt it, man. I just started going into what I could pull off, and that was more the Soundgarden, Alice in Chains type of stuff.
Sure.
But no, if I could sing like Phil, hell yeah, I would go into that. That was awesome. I thought he was the master at that stuff, man. And with Dime's melodic riff, that's what made Pantera amazing. Is they weren't just some hack job heavy metal band with a guitar player playing sloppy and the drummer all out of whack. Everything was so tight and so melodic, and Dime made the guitar like a cartoon. It was interesting. It gave the music a really good blend of pop sensibility with extreme brutal heaviness and FU type attitude. But and that's what pushed them in, I believe, man, is they had that element of the hooks, the melody.
Yeah, and it was kind of an element of surprise because it was just different enough. I think I met Phil just only a couple of times, but the first time I met him, I had to ask him, like, I don't remember exactly the question, but I was kind of stunned by like how he could sing like that and not destroy his voice on a regular basis. But he apparently didn't have many challenges with it. He could do it night after night. So amazing stuff.
I really don't even know how those dudes do that. I really don't even know. I try sometimes and it sounds like I'm doing some kind of comedy act or something. I mean, I just can't sing like that, man. I don't even know how they're pulling that out.
Yeah.
The guy from Disturbed, all these guys, man. I don't know how they whip that out, but it's awesome. But no, I can't do that at all. I auditioned for Damage Plan. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
The day my son was born, my second son, River, it was September 19th, 2002. I went over to Dime's right after the hospital. He was born, and I left the hospital, and I told Dime I barely had any sleep, and he said, "What do you want to do with another day?" And I'm like, thinking to myself, I didn't want to pass up an opportunity like that, So even as exhausted, been up all night, watched the birth of a child, cut the cord, left the hospital, went right over to Dime's. They'd already started drinking, and it was a weird mood over there, man, because of Phil and everything. I was over there quite a bit, and I heard the stories, but I won't say them here because it's none of my business. I don't know who didn't call who or what, but it was kind of a messed up mood that they were having to create another project other than Pantera. It was really, when I was over there, I could see how much it affected them. They didn't want to have to audition a bunch of anybody and do this band, but they wanted to continue to play. So when I got over there, Dime had been drinking a little bit, and he actually took me on a job interview. He wanted to interview me like a real interview. So me and him got in his Escalade, and I drove because he was a little... he had already started getting there. So we went to this little sports bar in Arlington. I think it was Bobby Valentine. You know a place like it?
Yeah.
So we went in. Yeah, we went in there and sat down, and he started asking me, now, if you sing for this band, you're a guitar player, you're still going to want to play guitar? I'm like, ain't nobody plays guitar in your band, dude, but you. So he's like, all right, good. And see, he always liked my voice, and he liked what I did, but when it came down to it, I could not do those screams. So that was the one concern is when you're coming out of Pantera and you're starting a side project, you got to at least get somebody who's in the ballpark of what everybody knows you for. You got to be capable of at least getting a little bit there. So he always liked that I had that Chain Soundgarden vibe, and he was helping the band I was in at the time, so he was familiar with everything that I did vocally. It's just the one concern we had was being able to hit that grit, and But no, he was really amazing, dude. Dime takes me on a job interview to Bobby V's. We sit down, and I felt really bad because he was a little tipsy, man, and people were flooding him. The little bar we were in, there was like 2 or 3 people, and by the time we got out of there, I was having to push people away. The table, the people were just, and I'm sure you've heard, or if you know Dime, he didn't treat anybody negatively like that. He was very appreciative of fans. We've had many conversations where he told me how to treat people like that. Don't you ever disrespect a fan or somebody that's waited so long to meet their idol, and then all of a sudden you do, and you treat them horribly. And so he wouldn't be negative to anybody. He just let them kind of berate him and stuff. And he was a little buzzed. So I was just like, dude, come on, man, let's get out of here. No, he wanted to sign everything, do everything. And let me switch the speaker thing here. No, it was just kind of sad for me because I could tell the situation. I was a little close to everything going on in a way. So, and I felt bad for auditioning. I knew that's not what they wanted. I knew they wanted to continue with Pantera. I knew they didn't want to be back to dealing with their local friends and auditioning guys like me for a side project. When you're Pantera, you know what I'm saying? So we were friends, and he was giving several of his friends like me and a couple other guys chances to come audition because Dime was always back home from his tours with Pantera, and he knew how eager the rest of us were to get our bands going, to get things going. So he actually gave a bunch of us an opportunity, man. He's so cool. And I went over there to their studio after that little interview and spent about 12 hours in there with him and Benny and Sterling, trying to create this. It eventually went on the Damage Plan album with Pat singing it, but I had a chance to work on that song for quite some time. And later, Benny was in there writing lyrics, and Dime was cheering me on, trying to figure out how to get some things going. But I was exhausted. Like I told you, I just witnessed the birth of the sun, and I was exhausted from that being there all night long. And I got over there, and I just didn't have it in me, man. It was a good audition, and I had a good track with him, but it didn't work out. It didn't match up. It wasn't right. But the part I took out of it was just how kind and how awesome that somebody like Dime is, who's perceived to be this certain type of character in the world and in music. He's actually, as a friend and at home, the most genuine, decent person ever, you know?
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for sharing the story. And my memories of Daryl are, he was always really kind, as you said, from the time I knew him as a wee lad to the time that he got famous. He was, and in fact, the most approachable of all of them for sure. So it's no surprise, but a very cool story nonetheless. Yeah.
Yeah, he used to give me, when I was younger, I was living in apartments and I was struggling. He used to give me and a couple other guys. There used to be more of those rock shops where you could go in and they'd have Evel Knievel toys and rock memorabilia. Those things could actually survive back in those days. And he used to give me pedals that he would sign. If I was short on rent or short on a bill or something, he would tell me to come over, and he'd have boxes of those wah pedals, those Dime wah pedals. He'd just have boxes of all his stuff. And he'd sit and pick through some of them and say, "Will this get you $250?" And he'd literally give you picks and pedals and give me things to go pay a bill or something. That's how cool he was, dude. Literally signed things because he knew his signature would bring something up in value a little bit. And gave the guitar player in my band, helped him get a car because the guy didn't have a lot of fatherly, and he didn't have a lot of father type stuff in his life. So Dime kind of, hey, if you get this going, I'll get you this. You know what I'm saying? Like a dad would. If you meet me halfway, I'll get you this going, but you got to do this. So Dime was like a father figure to a couple of my friends. One of my bandmates helped him get a car so he could get to practice, helped him get a guitar. It's amazing what that dude has done. And I don't mean to make the whole hour about that, but that's how I met Rex, and that's how all this came. That's why you're talking to me now, because this whole story, you know what I mean? This whole thing, it's all tied into itself. So yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I had I've never heard any of these stories either. Again, I'm not too surprised because he was such a nice kid and a nice man. So when I started looking at your your work, I ran across a couple of things on First Com Music. One of them is a contribution to something called Indie Anthems 2, and then I just sort of luckily found something called Blues on Fire. And I guess both of those projects are fairly recent. Can you talk about either or both of them a little bit?
Yeah, man. I don't know if you remember Keel, a heavy metal band from the 80s. Mark Ferrari, he ended up being in Wayne's World, the guitar player with the skunk stripe in the front of his hair. If you watch Wayne's World, that Tia Carrera, that the actress that had the band, and her guitar player was Mark Ferrari. Anyway, Keel was one of the first heavy metal bands, like in 1985, to have an MTV video, and they were poised to be Heavy Metal Band of the Year, and they were kind of bringing heavy metal to the mainstream. They lasted about a year. The guitar player, the guy I'm talking about, Mark Ferrari, he ended up being on Pantera's 1988 album before they got signed. He helped them. I think he wrote "Proud to Be Loud" with them or something like that. You remember that album, right? The 88 out Power Metal. That's what it was called. So anyway, yeah, Rex hooked me up with him, man. He ended up after that band and him acting in Wayne's World, he got a bunch of contacts in the movie business and stuff, and people in movies really wanted stuff that. Well, look, man, to get an AC/DC song in your movie, you're going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million, just to get one song in your movie. And so this guy created a way to make songs sound like, if you'll notice on TV, a lot of times you'll hear, you're like, damn, that sounds a lot like AC/DC, man, or that sounds like well, they're intentionally trying to, they hire you to sound like other bands and to make these songs that are similar to other people's songs, so they don't have to actually hire the real people. So a lot of times on TV, when you're hearing commercials or hearing things and you're like, damn, that sounds a lot like Aerosmith. Well, they were going for Aerosmith. So, so this guy, Mark Ferrari from Keel, that I'm telling you about, this whole long-winded story, he was actually the founder, the guy who ended up making that whole scene. And then recently, people have been getting sued for sounding like other people, so they're swimming away from all that. So the Blues on Fire thing you're talking about and the indie thing, that's through Universal, and that's their movie production company. And Rex had a long time ago told Mark, well, Mark knew that I helped write the album with Rex, and he started learning a lot more about who I was. And so I spoke with him, and he invited me in on the team. They've got a team of about 6 writers. Universal and Sony, all those kind of companies, they have a separate movie production type of entity, and then below that entity will be tons and tons of different what do you say? Little teams, man. Teams like Mark Ferrari has his own team of 6 writers. There'll be tons and tons of different groups that'll create songs for the company, and so yeah, he brought me in on that, and I've done 2 projects with him, the ones you just mentioned, and those will go out. Hell, I'm hoping they go out soon. They should go out and do some pretty cool stuff. That's the thing with this job, man, is you never know what's going to happen. You're kind of rolling the dice, which is exciting, but not when you have 3 kids and you're trying to count on a consistent paycheck every month and you're living on royalties that go up and down and up and down. You know what I mean?
Sure. Are both of the projects then for film and TV?
Yes. I mean, that's my job now, man. I'm not really into, I'll go do things with Rex here and there, but I'm not looking to be in a band and go on tour or do anything like that. If Rex needs something like that, then that gives me a chance to go out and scratch that itch. But otherwise, I'm not trying to do any of that. There's another world that runs alongside of the one that we're familiar with radio and bands and all that kind of stuff. There's another world of writing for film and TV. Dweezil Zappa's over here. That guy, you remember Blue Sarcino, some of these guitar players from the 80s. A lot of guys like that who nobody hears of anymore. They're over here in the production music field writing for film and television because they can't steal that. If you write songs, you can put it on an album. It's on YouTube tomorrow. Everybody gets it for free. But when you write a song and it goes on a TV show, good luck pirating that, because it's all licensed and they can account for everything and get you paid. When you cut an album with a band, it goes out there, it's free. You don't hardly see a dime unless you're Beyonce or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So this created a way for me to have a job in music and to do something, have kids, have a family, be a dad. And at the same time, I have written songs on 4 tracks and stuff since I was a kid. So it's just what I love to do. I love to be in the studio and I love to write. And so this was perfect for me, man. It lets me wake up every single day and create music that's going to go somewhere. And I don't have to stick to one format. If I was in a band, I'd have to always sound like that band. But every day I wake up, I can go any direction I want. And it's just really enjoyable. So I really like it.
I'm glad to hear that. And
I hope I answered your question. I talk a lot if you hadn't realized that yet. I'll go on and on. So you may have to stop me at some point.
You know, if I could make a buck for every time a guest said that, I'd have this podcast monetized quite well. So that you're good. So I'm kind of curious about First Com and their sort of role. Like, I guess they're hosting these tracks at the moment, or they're online. And
yeah, Universal. That's who Universal uses as their sister company to handle all this.
Okay.
So First Com is basically Universal. And then Extreme, the company I worked with when Rex and I did what was called Arms of the Sun, that was for Sony. So Sony's branch is Extreme, ATV, Sony ATV Extreme. So that's their production music side. And like I said, man, you can be a rock star in the production music field. You still get Grammys. You still get to experience it. You just don't have fame. Which is fine with me. I don't want, in the world like today where everybody's so pissed off, I don't want anybody knowing who I am. You know what I mean? So I'm good. There's a lot of hatred going on out there, man.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want anyone knowing where I am or who I am. I just would rather write in a room in the middle of nowhere and nobody know who I am and get paid to be a musician. That works for me just fine.
So when someone like me hears these tracks and I'm like, wow, this is really cool stuff, and specifically the ones that you're on, and I'm sure if I listen to some, I see Mark Ferrari's name here on the Blues on Fire now, but if I'm perusing these tracks, I haven't even checked, but like, can I buy them for personal? Yeah. Can I buy them, or is it just like they're sitting there and they're going to be used for film at some point? Hopefully?
Yeah, the reason they're even on that site is for supervisors for film and TV to be able to go peruse your work. So when they have a film going on, let's say they're working on a movie, that gives them a starting point of being, and those albums are compilations. So they're going for certain sounds and it'll be several writers on one thing, or sometimes they'll get one writer to do. Even Quincy Jones is involved in this kind of stuff. Lots of people, man. I mean, this is a really lucrative way for musicians to go to actually get paid for their stuff instead of it. Because being in a band,
being on Spotify or whatever,
that is such a rip. But anyway, President Trump just signed that Music Modernization Act day before yesterday. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know much about it, but I saw it.
That's so important, man. So that's going to start to govern some of these new technologies we have to account for music. And when the shift came from physical CDs and albums and tapes and all that to streaming and stealing and all that, boy, when they started to fix it, they fixed it for the labels and for Spotify. They didn't fix it for us. You know what I mean? So we're sitting there getting drops out of a bucket. They get the bucket and we're getting the drips out of the bottom. So that hopefully whatever he signed the other day that fixes that, because it's ridiculous. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Hopefully.
You can't make a living. You have to juggle all these different projects. That's why people are doing so many projects these days, is because it's just hard to sustain with one,
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question. Oh, yeah, First Com. Yeah, so First Com is a branch of Universal. Universal handles their artists separately than they would their production side, their film and TV side. So that's basically their sister company, First Com.
I got it. That's interesting. Well, then for anybody who's curious about the stuff that I'm mentioning, it's very cool, and I'll have links in the show notes so you can check it out. It looks like that is going to be the place you can hear it other than on film or TV, hopefully. That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, man, because they give you an assignment. They tell you, hey, this one's going to be this, and they'll give you a bunch of keywords that kind of describe, it's like a damn homework assignment. They tell you all the things they want and they need and what they want the music to have in it, and which makes it kind of fun, man. You can sit down and try to come up with, and they'll reject one or tell you, no, that's not, you're getting there, but it needs to be like this. And then so yeah, it's fulfilling, man. You work on some stuff and they give you kind of a direction, and because I don't really even write that kind of stuff, to be honest with you. That's not even my kind of. I mean, I like it and everything, but it was requested. You know, I mean, it's not what I probably would have written if I was doing a band or something like that. It's just what they ordered. If it makes, you know.
Yeah. What is more along the lines of what you do these days, just for, you know, like, like a band?
You know,
like
I don't even know, to be honest with you. That's a good question. I don't even, I don't know. I've been doing things for Rex. I've been doing things for the film and TV. I have not sat down to see who I am today. I have no idea. The last time I looked, it was Arms of the Sun. And the drummer and I, John Aber, who just called me actually a while ago, we started getting the vibe on the phone, talking about, you know, the thing, podcast I did. We got a little excited thinking that, you know, let's go back and do what we do, whatever that is, you know, because he's having to make some money too, and he's doing cover bands. It pays well, but it feels degrading in a way, because you come off the road in Germany and playing with Rex, and you get all the way back here, and you're back at playing in a cover band doing Jesse's Girl.
Yeah, I understand.
It's kind of rough.
Yeah.
Feel like a badass for a minute, and you get back to reality. And so, but yeah, so I don't even know what we were talking about, dude. I've smoked so much weed my whole life. I'm just kidding. I forget things.
So
I don't know what we're talking about.
When you go, I do that too. When you go back to Dallas, which it sounds like you hope to do, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, will your current form of work, you plan on still doing that? And do you think will you find yourself musically there?
Oh, that's the cool thing about this gig, is everything I do is from my own house, and I email it all. So I don't email it. They have a website that you upload your music to for them. And so I can be anywhere I want. I don't have to be where they're actually in Carrollton, Texas, First Com.
Yeah, okay.
Blew me away, because they're
funny.
Right there near, you remember Nomad Recording Studio with Gary Long?
Vaguely.
Out there in Carrollton?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah. I've heard of it.
Yeah, Nomad was there for many, many, many years, and this is in the same complex, First Com. It's just a little business note, but it's Universal's main movie hub place, and they're right over there. But yeah, that's the cool thing about this, is I would really just be moving back to Dallas just for the environment, not for music, because with this type of gig, I can do it from any place as long as I have a recording studio set up. So
I want to ask.
It really easy.
Yeah, I want to ask you before I forget about a question about doing the live shows with the Rex Brown Band to support his album. It kind of dawned on me. I was watching. I think you guys released probably on Facebook a live performance or rehearsal. And it dawned on me. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, these guys that go and they do these great sounding albums, and everything's pretty polished and has this certain sound quality. And then if they want to tour, I assume it's a whole different thing now in terms of reproducing the sound or figuring out what sort of sound you want to make happen live. Maybe you're not going to reproduce the sound at all, but what were you guys going for in comparison to what you had actually recorded, and how do you feel it went? You know, and were you happy with the outcome for the live performances?
Well, the good thing is that Rex is a believer in not trying to mimic what's on an album. He is more like, let's go for what we do, standing right here with what we're holding in our hands, and duplicate the song the best that we can, like the album, but not at the sacrifice of coming up short. When you can actually be more creative live and bring something unique out, instead of sitting there messing up, trying so hard to make it like the album. Instead, we can give it a new life on the road. Does that make sense? I mean, still keeping the ingredients of what people showed up to hear and what the song sounds like, but I'm just saying that it's very difficult in some cases to duplicate any album live, to an extent. So, no, he was encouraging to make it your own live, to make it what it is, man. And don't, if you fear where you can take things on a stage, boy, you'll clam up and sit near your head worried about making it like the album. So in a way, it gives you wings, man. You can get out on stage and take what you knew happened on the album and make it with what the tools you have out there on the stage. So that's a good thing about Rex, is that kind of freedom. It's important, because there was no way. But we got close. We had Joe on guitar and me on guitar and Rex on guitar. So there's 3 guitars there to cover most of what was on the album. There was a bunch of guitars, but at least 3 of them could get close live to covering that stuff. And the bass players Rex brings in are insane, so they can always cover that stuff. Poncho, did you see him on some of the German stuff?
No, I don't think I've seen any of those, and maybe afterwards you can point me to some of them. Send me some links. I'd love to see those. I think all I've seen is like a rehearsal thing.
The guy Rex got on bass was the bass player that took over for the legendary bass player in the band War. Why can't we be friends? Remember that stuff? Mm-hmm. The bass player that took over for that band is a young gun. He is smoking, dude. He's incredible. And so Rex got him on bass. So, he created a new sound. So when you have something that sounds like that, it's kind of hard to say, guys, cut that out. We're going to sound just like the album, So when you hear how everybody took this stuff live, it's like, shit, go with it, and it sounded pretty cool. But that's a good question, though, because I'm usually a stickler about trying to make things sound close to the album live. But this was real refreshing and relaxing to go out there and just do it the way we were organized for live performances, So it was cool.
Yeah, that makes sense, knowing what I know about Rex's influences. So
Rex
he would
is
be
not a by the book kind of guy either, man. It's moods and everything change constantly, and I don't mean that's a bad thing. I'm just saying he deals with a lot of stuff,
mm-hmm.
a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of pulling left and right and this and that. So
yeah. Yeah, believe me, I know.
I don't know what the hell I was just about to say. I was going somewhere with that.
Speaking of War, I don't know if you noticed, you mentioned that you listened to a few episodes, including the early one with Rex, but I had Lee Oscar on the podcast in episode 15, and that was a really, it was an interesting conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. And Joe George has been on here too, who I just really, it was pure coincidence that, for me, that he toured with you guys. I didn't even know it, and I'm doing research for him. Wow. I'm like, holy heck, he knows Rex. And then so it was.
You know how Rex met him, dude? He just walked up to him at the NAMM show, because Rex watches a lot of those. Rex is, dude. Ever since he decided to play guitar, he has gotten in guitar more than I ever did my whole life, man. Like, he researches all his gear. He'll tell you about all these amps. I can't keep up with him. I'm a guitar player, dude. I just can't keep it. He will tell you about every pedal, amp, everything. I mean, he's taking guitar like a kid that's 13. They just picked it up, man. He can't get enough of it. So he watches a lot of these things on YouTube about, guitar amp demonstration, pedal demonstrations. And that's what Joe from Joe George on his side gig, he works for reverb.com, and they do a lot of evaluations of gear and stuff. So Rex was just watching him, and then he bumped into him at the NAMM show and just said, dude, you're the guy. Tim was like, you got to be in my band. And so he just said it straight to him. The guy goes, okay. So he just basically told him where to be, and that's how it went down. That's how Joe joined up with us. Rex saw him on YouTube and approached him at NAMM, and the guy was floored, of course, and knew who Pantera was and was excited and jumped right in.
Yeah, and
then we met.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say that.
I was going to say we met the bass player when he was touring with Slayer. Poncho was not Slayer, dude. Dave Lombardo from Slayer, the drummer. He had a side project called Film, and that's where Poncho also comes from. The bass player that went to Germany with us. He played in Film with Dave Lombardo. So when Dave Lombardo and Film came through Dallas, they needed a bass amp. Rex wouldn't get up, so I had to get up and go to the jam room, get his bass amp, and take it over to Dave Lombardo and them at this little studio thing, this TV network deal. They were doing a morning show. So I got to know those guys, and that's how we got the bass players, Rex. We met Poncho through that, so that's how he got his German band over there.
Yeah, I'll have to check him out. I was going to say that to hear Joe talk about getting invited to play is pretty funny on the podcast interview, because he's kind of got this very sort of mellow, at least the night that I talked to him for the podcast, and he's like, yeah, so I ran into him at NAMM, and he's like, hey, you should join my band, and his response was like, yes, Rex Brown, I will join your band.
Yes, sir, Rex Brown. Joe's awesome, man. I love Joe.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy, an interesting artist. I need to...
Extremely intelligent, man. Extremely intelligent. See, I'm more like... I jammed to Randy Rhoads growing up. I learned a little bit. I even went to a music school in Hollywood, dude. But like I said, man, I'm more of a stoner. I did lava lamps and good times and stuff. Joe was a buckled down, get serious, go to Berkeley, and very collegiate with music and understand. I feel stupid around him. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I wing it and go by ear, and I know some stuff, man. But theory, I was always a little scared to go too far in, because I as a writer, I enjoy not knowing too much about music, because I'll explore more in my brain. But if I know too much about music, I feel like, and he disagrees. He's like, I think if you know more about music, then if you play one chord, you'll know the only other six you can go to. I'm like, well, I'd rather my brain tell me what those chords are through imagination and creativity than through science, and trying to, just knowing that if you play a C major chord, you got six choices you can go to, and he knows all, very smart. And it works for him, but for me, I think if I was too soaked in knowledge, it would stifle me,
Sure. Yeah, I forgot he's a Berkeley guy.
Outstanding musician. Yeah, he's outstanding, man. Great musician. Rex really pulled together a lot of good people for the solo project. A lot of good people.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that was a good experience. He's a cool guy. And I was going to say I need to go revisit. He was doing this year I think he's still doing it. Gosh, so much time has passed, but he was doing a new song with a video every month of the year. Yeah, it was during this year, and I've kind of missed the last couple, so I need to go check it out. He's always doing some interesting stuff. So
he's always honoring people on their birthdays, and it reminds you of all these great people. He'll do a song if it's Hendrix's birthday. He'll do a Hendrix song. He'll kind of do a little celebration of whoever, from Robert Johnson to you name it. So Joe's a good guy, dude. Really good guy, and really imaginative, and that's great that he honors past musicians doing that kind of stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, he does seem cool. So I absorbed a lot of information this morning before we got on our call, and are you, and I say that because you may have said it right on the little video podcast, which, by the way, I encourage you to do more of. You have a great voice for it, and I think people would enjoy hearing what you have to say about music or whatever.
Life, I don't ever do things like that, man. I just, for some reason, when I got into music, I didn't get into it because I was extroverted. I got into it because I was clammed up in my bedroom. I got picked on a lot, bullying and stuff like that when I was little. So when I was about here in Nashville, I just stayed in my room. I wanted a drum set. And my parents, I was 13, we were standing in the music store here in Nashville and looking at the black pearl drum set like Peter Criss, a Kiss. And I was like, oh my God, if I could just... And my dad looked at my mom and said, we're not having no GD drum set in the house. So they started to walk out, but they could tell I was tore up because I wanted to get into music so bad. And my dad said, if you want to play guitar, it has a volume knob. We'll get you that. And I was like, all right. So I kind of came into guitar. I wanted to be a drummer, but I kind of came into it that way. But did I take us off the rails again, man?
You did, but that's okay. I wanted to ask you, and it looks like you and some friends are going to do an Arms of the Sun album in the coming year. Did I get that part right?
Yeah, that's what I was telling you before when I went on my other rant, is that, the drummer, John, and I, and I'm sure Rex would do it if we asked him and everything, but a lot of the writing that was on that album came from what I told you about, just me writing in a bedroom and
right.
and having life events affect me and creatively and coming up with that stuff, and it got put on that album. So I figured John and I, the drummer that we're talking about, he played in King Diamond and Chastain. I don't know if you remember Chastain, the guitar shredder from the 80s. So he and I have had a process since like about 1990, and I understood bass and guitars and vocals, but when it came to rhythm and drums, a lot of times I would program the drum machine to be quite silly. It wouldn't represent what a drummer would actually do. So John was really good about helping me with all that, and through the years we developed a relationship of me kind of getting music prepared at home, and then we go in the studio, and instead of setting up or he's listening to people in the studio jam, I'd have the tracks done. So there's nobody in the band messes him up. The tracks are perfect in the studio. You just put them on a fader, and then he can record drums as if the band's in other rooms playing, but it's pre-recorded. So it's all tight. He can get his drums down. Then I'll go back and layer everything back over. So that's kind of how Arms of the Sun was until we went in and Rex cut the bass and we did it as a band. But yeah, so we decided it'd be cool to put that thing back together. We don't have a band. I know it's so confusing on Facebook if you don't explain every little detail. But it's just the two of us wanting to put music out again. And they know that name, and it's going to sound like that. So
sure.
We just figured we'd just do it under that moniker, you know.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you are. I hope that maybe you guys will at least go play some shows with whomever. It doesn't have to be Rex, although it sounds like it would be really fun to have him do anything with you. But I think
Rex would do it, man. Rex and I are on good terms. We just talked about his new stuff he's working on. He'll be back here in Nashville in like a week or two. I think I'm going to go see him and possibly do some more guitar tracks or some things. We're taking a different approach on this one. A lot of people read it weird, man. They read into things, but when you're actually in the circle, it's so on the last album I was involved from the very beginning. We actually started on my songs as the foothold for the whole project, and this time around he's starting with his own. I'm staying out of it, and it's not a bad thing. It's like, hey, this time you're not. It's not like that. It's just, hey, the first time we tried it this way, where we rooted from your songs and built our way up. This time, Rex wants to start it from his songs and not have anybody interfere. That way he can get a good foothold for where he's at now. And then I'll come in like now and add some things on the back end. So on the first album, I was there on the front end, and we finished it out with his songs on the back end. So on this album, it's all him, and I'm just going to come in and add some things here and there, whatever he gets done. So it's really cool, man. Rex likes to try new things. He doesn't like patterns and routines. And, I mean, he had that with Pantera, but after that, the things he wants to do now is just, try all the cookies in the jar, man. Try it different ways. And so that's what he's doing on this go round.
Well, that's cool. That's exciting. I haven't had an opportunity to talk with him lately, so I didn't know if he was planning another album. I'm really glad he's going to do that. I'm glad you're most likely going to work with him on it. And
oh yeah,
I'm also
we have a great relationship, man.
I figured, and I'm looking forward to whatever you put out with Arms of the Sun, and hopefully you will get back to DFW. And next time I'm there, I'll get to hang out with you.
Yeah, we'll go to lunch or something. Absolutely, man.
That sounds great. Well, hey, man, I very much appreciate your time. It's wonderful kind of getting to know you here in a short conversation.
You too, brother.
Love the work you're
Absolutely.
doing. And can I just say I wish and hope that you will put some stuff out there that's more for the normal public consumption, however you can do it, and get a little return from it, because you're a wonderful artist.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Yeah, I would love to. I think I'm the Arms of the Sun stuff we're going to start writing. I like writing in the winter where it gets really cold, and it makes you kind of reflect. Wintertime, for some reason, puts a mood on me, and it just helps you. So I'm going to get started on that stuff here in the next month when it cools down, and buckle down and start coming up with some stuff. But I appreciate you listening to it, man. We'll definitely get some more stuff out there.
Absolutely. I love it, and I'll be sharing it. So, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother.
Coldest soul is crowned your king.
Hey, thanks for listening. Question for you. Are you struggling to move your music journey forward? I can help, if not personally, then by referring you to the next best available resources. Schedule a free 15-minute call with me to find out if I can indeed help you. It's easy. Just visit unstarvingmusician.com/coaching to schedule your call today. Look for links to just about everything covered in this episode in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. This episode was powered by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and ebooks just about everywhere you can find them. It's also available as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. I'd love it if you picked up a copy and would love it even more if you left a review. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.